You all ready for the big night out tonight?
Yeah, it's gonna rock!
Are you ready to go crazy?
I'm already hearing voices!
Are you ready to...
SpongeBob, Patrick, don't you mind?
What is going on, everybody? I kind of like this idea. I kind of like the idea that I just walked into this room and there happened to be a microphone set up and I'm just like, hey, let's sit down and have a conversation. Let's sit down and talk. Even though it's 100% scripted and 100% not as candid as I would want you to believe. But you know what? Whatever. Who cares? That's the special treat for people who stream this on YouTube versus people who just listen to the podcast on their podcast app, which I'm not judging. I'm just saying it's a pretty fun experience, a pretty fun lie, I would say, that I'm selling to you right now, that I just walked in here and was like, oh, hey, interesting. There's a podcast. But anyways, to the point, my name is, for those of you who don't know me, which, because this is the first episode of a given podcast, I would say that there's probably not a ton of people who don't know who I am, but retrospectively, if somebody's going back into these podcast archives, and maybe this is 5 years down the road and this is still going strong, or maybe it's 1 year down the road and there's a bunch of people who don't know who I am and their friends told them about this podcast because either they were featured on it or their friends were on it or something or other. Regardless, that was a really, really long way to explain introducing myself. But if you don't know who I am, my name is Isaiah Dominguez. I am first and foremost a musician, a singer-songwriter out of the Pacific Northwest, Portland, Oregon right now, although originally Seattle, Washington, and originally the OG, Olympia, Washington. Shout out to Olympia, I guess, to Tumwater. And I, like I said, am a musician, singer-songwriter, and I additionally, on top of that, have a business in videography and audio production, and I do a whole bunch of other stuff, just like creative stuff. I'm a lesser known graphic designer also, and photographer, I suppose, if need be. But really my strengths lie in being a songwriter and in being a videographer and an audio producer or a music producer or a producer, an engineer. I don't really know what they call that. But anyways, all that to say that's who I am. And I am here to introduce you to the very first episode of this new podcast called Cleverly Titled Conversations. As you can tell, I am the only one going to be featured on this episode, which may be a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe you do want to sit here and listen to me talk for 15 to 30 minutes alone in a room. Purely probably entertaining only myself, and the people who own offices around my office, but just hearing a madman talk inside of his own office. But that was a lot of caveats and definitely me going down a wormhole. So Cleverly Titled Conversations is the name of the podcast, partially because it is sponsored by the video production company Cleverly Titled Creative. Shout out to them. If you are looking for a video to produce, you should hit them up, cleverlytitledcreative@gmail.com. And thank you for making this podcast possible. So I think the first thing to jump off is, why on earth are you creating a podcast right now? Why, other than the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. We've been in quarantine for probably 5 months now. I'm trying to think. March, April, May, June, July, August. Yeah, 5-6 months. And the podcast arena is already super saturated with a bunch of podcasts talking about a bunch of different things. But I think the idea sparked with me when I've been having a really hard time creating any kind of art lately. I've been having a really hard time creating anything, being inspired. Not only that, but just like showing up to be creative, other than to just like pay my bills with like clientele, which I do enjoy the work that I do for other clients. But I think that there's a part of me that really still wants to create my own art and create my own things. And I've been having a really hard time struggling with that lately. I think partially because I'm lacking the human interaction that I really desire. I am a textbook extrovert sometimes, all the time. And I love talking with people. I love having conversations, and social media doesn't always cut it. And I've had so many awesome and amazing experiences and amazing talks with a lot of my friends and a lot of like people who are influential in their separate industry. I've had a lot of cool opportunities to talk and interview people who are just like way more talented and way smarter than I am. And I feel like the wisdom that they impart on me and that I am able to then apply to my own life, and the inspiration that they give me to like continue creating music and to continue creating art, whatever medium that may be, is so invaluable. And I would love if other people could hear these conversations and if I could share them with other people. And so that is where this idea was born. Because I think that there's like this giant misconception of like what creativity looks like, who is a creative, what creativity is worth, what you should be investing in it, how much you should spend, how much emotional and physical investment goes into being a creative and creating any kind of art or anything else. And then just like, I think that there's a personal standard that everybody who works in a creative field or a non-traditional creative field, like it's one that people wouldn't traditionally consider like a creative job. I think that there's a standard that you hold yourself to that maybe is not the same standard that is achievable, or maybe I don't think that I said that the right way. I think that we hold ourselves to a standard that is unattainable, not because it's far-fetched or because it's unachievable in any kind of way, but because once we get there, we're immediately dissatisfied because there's another place that we could go. So, or at least, I mean, that's me. I mean, maybe there's people out there who are very satisfied with their creative jobs, with where they're at in their industry. And those are people that I definitely want to talk to. And I think that is important, and connecting with people is super important. And I think that having these conversations together will not only like help other people understand that like I'm not alone in the thoughts that I think. I'm not, my experiences are both unique and shared by other people in my industry. And I am at an appropriate place for what I'm doing and how long I've been doing it. And perhaps I'm even more ahead of where I should be or where other people have been in my own shoes. So there's that. But yeah, I think that I have a lot of really great, awesome, very smart, talented friends, and I would love to sit down and have conversations with them, maybe about one topic, maybe about a lot of different topics, and perhaps it will be some shows just like this one where it's just myself sitting in a room with a microphone, just kind of like ranting about things. Or maybe there's something that I need to get off of my chest or whatever. But I think that connecting with people is one of the most important things that we can do, especially at a time like right now, and especially when I don't have the opportunity to just like be around tons of people like I enjoy. And I'd be lying if I said like this wasn't also satisfying a part of like not being able to tour, not being able to play shows, not being able to all that kind of stuff. I know that there are musicians out there right now that are playing shows, and I would like to kind of pick their brain about that and how they go about doing that without feeling guilty, and or if they're conducting it in like a very safe manner. But that is really kind of the sum up of what this is. So this is a pilot episode, right? And nobody really likes pilot episodes because your job is to kind of establish all of the characters at once, at least in like television. When you're doing television, the pilot episode is really tough because you have to establish the personality of every single character that you're going to use for at least the foreseeable future, who's not a bit character or somebody who's going to like not really play a key part. But if you're going to be a core character to the story, you kind of have to be introduced as to who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, all that kind of stuff. And that's, I think, why a lot of people are not entertained by them. That's why everybody says, well, you have to get through the first episode or you have to get through the first season of a show. Shows like The Office, shows like Parks and Rec. These like amazing shows. A lot of people, before you try them, at least way back before everybody and their mom had seen these shows, a lot of people had to say like, oh, you have to get through the first season and then it starts to really get good. Or you have to get through the first few episodes and then it starts to really get good. And I think that's because a lot of times you're so busy trying to establish like what the structure of the show is going to look like and what we're trying to achieve from it, what story are we trying to tell, all that kind of stuff. And so the reason why the pilot episode was just me sitting here introducing you to a podcast, which obviously you know what a podcast is. And this could have really been a 5-minute episode of just like, hey, what's up? My name is Isaiah Dominguez. I'm a musician. I'm going to be sitting down with friends. We're going to have conversations with each other. I hope it inspires you. But I wanted to sit down and kind of dive more in depth about that subject matter because, one, I'm an obscenely wordy person. I love to like just talk and ramble forever and ever. And if somebody's willing to listen, then that's dope. And I think it might have something to do with like my anxiety and my ADHD, I guess. But also, I just like talking. And I don't know if it's because I'm a sociopath who likes the sound of his own voice, but also I just think it's important that I didn't waste this first episode with a really genuine good conversation with somebody who's super smart, and then just, I don't know, it just be disorganized and not understand what we're talking about or why we're talking about it or what the structure of the show is going to look like or who even was going to be the first guest. There's so much pressure on like who's going to be the first guest of your podcast. And so now the first episode is done. It's gone. It's out of the way and nobody is the first guest. And that, I think, sums up a lot of what being a creative is. A lot of times you are just creating on your own and you have to kind of learn how to tap into that without the outside help of others, especially in like a corporate setting. A lot of times you are the only creative on a team or you are the head creative on a team and everybody looks at you and there's this overwhelming weight of like, whew, so what are you going to do? What's the idea? You know, everybody's looking at you in the boardroom. So I think that is kind of the theme of why this episode is just myself. All that being said, that was a really, really, really long just monologue, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you are interested and you work in a creative field, I would love to sit down and have a conversation with you. Even if you, actually, you know what? Even if you don't work in a traditionally creative field, if you would like to sit down and have a conversation about your industry or about something you're passionate about, or if you have some thoughts on being a creative or what a creative is worth, all that kind of stuff, the themes are going to kind of arise through the next few conversations that I'm having. And I already have them lined up. I'm very, very excited about like the people that I'm interviewing and what we're going to talk about. But if you would like to be a guest on this, if you would like to sit down and have a conversation with me, I would absolutely enjoy that. Shoot me an email shoot me an email or a text message. You can reach this podcast at cleverlytitledcreative@gmail.com or cleverlytitledconversations@gmail.com. And also, if you have my number, you can just shoot me a text and be like, yo, dude, I remember you talking about this podcast a long time ago when you first started your adventure of being a freelancer, and I would love to sit down and have a conversation with you about how that's going, about what I'm up to, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, let's do it. Let's sit down. Let's have a conversation. Let's share our knowledge and wisdom with other people. And I think that's all I have to say about that. Like I said before, my name is Isaiah Dominguez. This is the pilot episode was the pilot episode of Cleverly Titled Conversations. I hope that this didn't ruin it for you in the future, and I'm really excited about what it has to hold, and just stay tuned.